begin this talk, I'd like you to take a journey with me to 2 second grade classrooms. And as we enter these 2 second grade classrooms, I'd like you to ask a question. Which of these 2 classrooms would you have wanted to be a part of, maybe have your child be a part of? And which one, if you're an educator, would you be most proud to call your own? Because they're based in real stories. So as we enter the first classroom, it looks exactly identical to the second classroom in that there are little tables with little chairs and colorful strips of paper where students have their name written in cursive at the top of their desks. They enter the classroom eager to learn and hopeful to impress their teacher. The first classroom, the teacher really values the idea of thinking as part of the learning process. So she's always looking for ways in which she can make her student thinking visible so she can know her individual student learners and their needs. In the second classroom, this teacher is what we call a content-based teacher. She really values learning, and she wants her students to have the information they're going to need to be successful in the second grade. So she follows a pacing guide to make sure that no content, no skill, and no information is left behind. Back in our first classroom, this teacher has a class set of iPads, which is great, but it's the way in which she uses these iPads that is distinctively different and empowering. She doesn't use the iPads to deliver instruction or have kids on the devices using screen time to practice skills. She's using them to capture student learning and growth. So she might use an app like Explain Everything to have the kids show how they got to a math problem, and at the same time it grabs an articulated recording of their thought process so that she can know where there's gaps in their learning, where they've mastered content, and she can adjust her instruction to their individual needs. Back in the second classroom, this teacher is teaching the same content at the same time in the same way. She believes that the worksheets she's using and the multiple choice questions she's having students answer gives her the information she needs about them as learners. She has one computer that sits on her laptop that she might use, or sits on her desk, that she might use to download lesson plans, maybe input grades, or check emails. But her classroom is pretty much devoid of technology. Back at this classroom, the teacher's still using the iPads, but wait, she's using them to connect outside the 4 walls of her classroom. So while the teachers are reading, or while the kids are reading a story, she is having them compose questions that they'll tweet with the author, and the author responds back. And in that dialogue, it fuels a deeper comprehension of the text for those kids. They're also blogging, because this teacher learned how to blog. So she has them blogging with kids from other parts of the world. And in those blogs and the subsequent comments from the blogs, the kids are starting to understand that based on where you live, you might see things differently. You might have different opinions. But now they're packing up for recess, and they get 45 minutes a day to reset their brain and fuel their bodies for the powerful learning that's going to happen in the afternoon. Back at this classroom, there's a math lesson happening, and the teacher is standing in front of the room. Shh, be quiet. You don't want to miss anything. Because in this classroom, it's the teacher who's explaining how to get to the solution of the problem. But in the middle of the classroom sits one sweet little girl who doesn't understand what's happening. And the truth is, she hasn't understood for about 3 weeks now. So she grows bored as the teacher talks. And as kids do, she starts to talk to the kid next to her. But in a compliant-based, content-rich classroom, that's considered disrespectful, and this little child is being sent to the principal's office. And in the principal's office, she will find out that for the crime of not understanding math, she's going to spend her recess, the 20 minutes she's allotted 3 times a week, she's going to spend that running the perimeter of the schoolyard. She's a sweet little girl, so she runs those laps and she doesn't talk back. But with each step, tears run down her face. And when she gets the courage to look up, she notices that the kids are in the middle of the schoolyard yelling at her, "Faster, faster." This little girl is already beginning with each of those steps to hate math, to hate school. Chances are she's going to become one of the 75% of my 7th grade girls who claim they don't like math because they're just not good at it. Because she's from Boynton Beach, Florida, she may become, in her high school years, one of the students who on international achievement tests will score 40th in the world on math. As a student in this class, I'm a learner, and I'm learning because my teacher is a learner first. As a student in this class, I can't express myself. My teacher doesn't hear me, and I cannot communicate to her how I learn through multiple choice answers. In an effort to make all classrooms look like this first classroom, people see the success of this teacher as the iPads. So school districts and school boards everywhere go out and buy iPads and Chromebooks, hoping that they can replicate this. But this is not the truth. If we gave this teacher a class set of iPads, chances are she would use it to deliver instruction and have her kids practicing skills. What makes the difference in these two classrooms is that this teacher is a learner. So today at this TED, I want us to do one thing. I want you to stop, or us, to stop talking about technology and start talking about learning. Because learning needs to be disrupted. The way teachers think of themselves as learners needs to be disrupted, and the way we deliver instruction to students in classrooms needs to be disrupted. Disruption means taking an existing market, like education, and doing something that makes it more worthwhile. And as teachers, we don't know where to begin. So I say we need to look out into the business world to find examples. So you may remember a little company called Blockbuster. Blockbuster did a great job of delivering video content. In fact, I know I drove my 6 miles to rent and return movies all the time, until a little company called Netflix came around. And Netflix sent movies to my house, and at first I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I realized as these movies were at my house, I didn't have to pay a late fee, and that was more worthwhile to me. But Blockbuster didn't see this. Blockbuster didn't see that Netflix was a disruptor of the video market. And Blockbuster didn't make the change it needed to make when it needed to be made. And we know what happened to Blockbuster. Education is in that same place. But if we keep looking at Netflix, Netflix didn't stop there. Netflix didn't go, woohoo, we're sending movies out, this is fantastic. Netflix iterated, and they started to stream video content. And that was amazing because finally, on demand, I could watch anything that they had available. I hadn't been able to do that outside of a hotel room. And that was fantastic. But then some brilliant person at Netflix said, hey, do you guys think we could make TV shows? And so they did. Now, I don't know if you've seen a Netflix TV show. Have any of you watched House of Cards? For those of you who didn't raise your hand, I'm not going to tell you to watch House of Cards because it's really risque, but watch House of Cards. And House of Cards and Orange is the New Black started a new phenomenon called binge watching. And binge watching kind of started a new phenomenon called getting in fights with your boyfriend or husband about watching episodes without you. Now, I don't know if this happens at your home, but when I travel, I leave strict instructions. When there's like 3 episodes left of Making of a Murder, I'm like, do not watch those episodes without me. But have you had this experience? I get home, I can tell. I can tell by the way he's checking his Facebook during the episode and like not paying attention. He watched that episode without me. And I can't decide, is that lying? I can't figure it out. So it's this phenomenon of binge watching. Don't do this without me. I can't wait to watch this. I want that to happen in education. I want there to be the phenomenon of binge learning, where kids cannot get enough of our classrooms and they can't wait to get there, that their eyes are lighting up, and that we're creating not classrooms that are great, but kick-ass classrooms that kids cannot get enough of. So I believe there are 3 simple things we can do to make this happen. And if we focus on these 3 things, we can create atmospheres of binge learning and an avalanche of learning that will change how we do schools. The first thing that I believe is that we need to change the focus of questions, what questions look like. Instead of kids answering questions all the time, what about kids asking questions? What if we walked into like a 9th grade science classroom and there was a question, how do we solve world hunger? And we use that question and the skills and the content that they need to learn that year to kind of fuel the understanding of that information, but maybe answer that question. What about kids getting together in groups to come up with questions that will drive instruction, using things from the Right Question Institute out of Boston that teach kids how to ask good questions and how to have them help them with owning their learning? Because our classrooms cannot be incubators of memorization. We need to allow kids to explore, to fall in love with problem solving, so that maybe a student in one of your classes asks the question, can we end cancer? And is one of the people who finds the cure. The next thing we can do outside of questions is refocus how we capture student learning and growth. I taught for 17 years, and I know one truism. Multiple choice questions do not, have not, and will not give us rich information about student learning and growth, period. So, it's time for us to reframe how we get this information. In 2016, we have the tools to get inside of students' brains. We can record what they're thinking, the articulation process of how they got to a solution. We can know when they know something and when they don't, and we can adjust our instruction in real time to meet their needs. Finally, it's the idea of literacy. The definition of literacy in 2016 is evolving. And while reading and writing are still very important, our students need to be transliterate, fluent in all mediums of information, not just reading and writing. They need to understand narrative and bias in videos, in social media, and in images. They need to be able to tell a story and tell a story well using one of these new forms of information. And whether we like it or not, learning is happening online. So our students need new skills, they need to develop new literacies, and if we're going to get them ready for their future, we have to disrupt our definition of literacy. For example, there are some teachers who didn't know anything about, well, they knew something about coding, but they wanted to learn more. So they met together in California EdChat one night, Sunday night at 8 p.m. to talk to each other, to bounce ideas off of each other about coding. They didn't learn it in their teacher preparation classes. They didn't learn it in school. And they came together to find out more. Your own Karen Lehrman didn't have to get her passport ready and buy an expensive ticket to California to learn with other California educators. She came to California EdChat to learn with them. And in 2016, this is what learning looks like. Because being connected will serve as a roadmap, and other educators become our guides, our Sherpas, to a more innovative and disruptive classroom where learning once again is more worthwhile. So why do we need to disrupt? We need to disrupt student boredom. We need to disrupt little 7-year-olds who already hate school, already hate math. And those kids who are running away from school rather than running to it. And for those of us who are teachers, we need to disrupt the things we hate about our job, like grading multiple choice tests. So, my first 2 years of teaching, I did exactly what I described in this classroom. I taught from worksheets. I taught from questions at the end of a chapter. And every time I go somewhere and speak, I think of those kids because I didn't understand them. I didn't know them as learners. And like, what kids did I not reach because of it? So when I knew better, I did better. And now, if there was one kid from one of my classes who would say, you know what? I love learning because my 7th grade teacher, her class was kick-ass. I couldn't wait to get to school, and she made learning contagious. That would be one of the most proud moments of my life. Thank you.